Someone told you the 50-30-20 rule would fix your finances. 50% for needs, 30% for wants, 20% for savings. Simple, clean, easy to follow. But why are so many people doing it right, putting exactly 20% away every month, and still not building any real wealth? Still not feeling like they're making progress? Still sitting there 6 months in, wondering why the math worked on paper, but nothing actually changed? That's what we're getting into today. Because the problem isn't your discipline. It's not your income. It's not even your spending. It's the rule. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly where it falls apart, who it was actually designed for, and what to replace it if you want your money to do something real. Let's get into it. So first, what does the 50-30-20 rule actually say? The idea came from Elizabeth Warren's book, 2005, All You're Worth, written with her daughter Amelia Warren Tyagi. The premise was simple. Take your after-tax income and split it into 3 buckets. 50% goes to needs, rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments. 30% goes to wants, dining out, subscriptions, travel, anything that isn't strictly necessary. And 20% goes to savings. The goal was to give people a mental model at a time when most people had none. Before budgeting apps, before YouTube channels, before anyone was talking about personal finance in plain English, most people's approach to money was vague. They spent what came in and hoped something was left. The 50-30-20 rule was an attempt to replace "I think I'm doing okay" with an actual framework. And I want to be honest about something before I take it apart. For that specific problem, it worked. It gave people structure. It forced them to think in percentages instead of dollar amounts, which actually helps when your income changes. And it started real conversations about the fact that spending everything you earn is not a financial strategy. That's the fair version of this rule. But here's the other version, the one nobody talks about. The 50-30-20 rule was built for a specific economic moment, a specific cost structure, and a specific income level. And when you pick it up and apply it to someone earning a typical salary in a major U.S. city in 2026, it doesn't just fall short, it actively points them in the wrong direction. It gives people the feeling of having a plan when the plan itself has 3 structural problems baked into it. Let me walk you through each one. Failure number 1. The 50% needs bucket is already gone before you spend $1 on anything optional. Let's run real numbers. The median personal income in the U.S. is around $45,000 a year. For full-time workers, it's closer to $55,000. We'll use $55,000. That's someone working full-time, earning a wage that most people would consider a decent starting point. After federal income tax, Social Security at 6.2%, and Medicare at 1.45%, your monthly take-home on $55,000 is roughly $3,550. 50% of that is $1,775 for needs. Now open Zillow or Apartments.com and search for a 1-bedroom apartment in any city where careers actually exist. Austin, Denver, Chicago, Nashville, Atlanta. The national median 1-bedroom rent is now around $1,500 a month. In Seattle, Denver, or any coastal city, you're looking at $1,700 to $2,000 just for rent on a modest place. Even at the national median, that's already 85% of your entire needs budget before you've paid a single other bill. But let's use $1,500 to keep the numbers fair. That leaves $275 for everything else in the needs column. The average monthly car payment in the U.S. is now $750 for a new vehicle and $535 for used, according to Experian's Q3 2025 data. If you're in a city without reliable public transit, which describes most of America, a car isn't optional. That's a need. Health insurance. The average employee contribution for single coverage is around $120 a month. That's before deductibles, copays, and dental. Utilities run $150 to $250 a month depending on climate. Groceries for one person run $300 to $400 a month if you're cooking at home regularly. Add it up and you're looking at $2,600 to $3,000 in genuine needs, not luxuries, not wants, just the cost of having a roof, staying healthy, and getting to work. That's 73 to 85% of take-home for a single full-time worker. The 50% ceiling doesn't exist in the real world for most people. It exists in a version of 2005 when rent was lower, healthcare was cheaper, and student debt wasn't a standard part of the financial picture for anyone in their 20s and 30s. When someone tries to apply the 50-30-20 rule today, one of two things happens. Either they see immediately that it doesn't work and abandon the whole framework, or, and this is more common, they start reclassifying things. The car payment becomes a want, so the math holds. Groceries get squeezed. They torture the numbers until the budget looks right on paper and still feel like they're failing every single month. Neither outcome helps anyone. Failure number 2. The 30% wants allocation is completely out of proportion for someone at a typical income. Let's go back to our $3,550 take-home. 30% is $1,065 for wants. Dining out, streaming subscriptions, gym memberships, clothes, weekend trips, drinks with friends, everything discretionary. Now look at what 20% savings looks like on that same income. That's $710 a month. The rule is literally telling you to spend $355 more per month on optional lifestyle than you put toward your financial future. Every single month, the Enjoy Right Now category gets a 50% larger allocation than the Build Something Lasting category. That ratio might make sense in a particular situation. If you're already maxing out your 401k at $23,500 a year, already contributing to a Roth IRA, already investing in a taxable brokerage account, and you still have money left over, spending more on your lifestyle is reasonable. You've handled the future, enjoy the present. But that is not the situation of someone earning $55,000 a year following this rule for the first time. For that person, $710 a month into savings is doing all the heavy lifting for their entire financial future, and the rule says, that's enough, now spend $1,065 on things you don't need. That sequencing never gets questioned because the rule packages it as balance. 50, 30, 20 sounds responsible. It sounds like you're being good with money, but under the hood, you're prioritizing current consumption over future security at a ratio that doesn't serve most people who actually need to build wealth from a moderate income. Failure number 3. Saving 20% and investing 20% are not the same thing, and the rule doesn't care about the difference. This one bothers me the most. When Warren and Tyagi wrote about savings, they used the term broadly: emergency fund, paying down debt, retirement contributions, general savings deposits. The 20% bucket was never exclusively about investing. It was a catch-all for anything that wasn't spending. That ambiguity creates a real problem. A lot of people hear save 20% and they save 20%. They open a regular savings account at their bank, set up an automatic transfer, and watch the balance grow. They feel good about it. They're following the rule. The national average savings account rate currently is 0.41% annually per FDIC data. High-yield savings accounts are better, around 4.3% at the best institutions right now, but those rates follow the Fed and will continue drifting down as rates get cut. Here is what the difference looks like in actual money over 30 years. $710 a month in a savings account at 0.41% annually for 30 years. You end up with roughly $261,000. Nominal dollars, not inflation adjusted. $710 a month in a total market index fund averaging 10% annually for 30 years. You end up with approximately $1.6 million. Same amount per month, same 30-year timeline, same starting point. The difference is $1.34 million, just from where the money goes. The 50-30-20 rule gets you to the 20% and then leaves you there.
It has nothing to say about whether that money is parked in a checking account or compounding in a low-cost index fund. And that gap between where most people actually put their savings versus where the money needs to go to do anything real is one of the most expensive financial mistakes you can make, even when it looks like you're doing everything right.
Now, here's the deeper problem, the one that runs underneath all three of the failures I just described. The 50-30-20 framework is built on a specific sequence: earn, spend on needs, spend on wants, save what's left. The saving step comes last. It gets whatever survived the first two categories. That is not a saving strategy. That is hoping your self-control is stronger than your spending habits every single month for the rest of your working life. And behavioral finance research is consistent on this. People who save what's left over save dramatically less than people who remove savings first before they have a chance to spend it. It's not a character flaw. It's just how the brain works. When money is in your checking account, it reads as available. When it's already gone, transferred to an investment account the morning your paycheck hits, you adjust to the smaller number without really thinking about it. The rule got the sequence backwards. Wealth building has to come first, not last. So what does a better framework actually look like? I want to give you something specific, not a critique without a replacement. Here's what I'd build instead: a simple, honest structure for someone who wants their money to do something without having to track every transaction. Call it the Invest First model. 4 steps. Step 1, before you budget anything else, pull your investment contribution off the top. Not 20% into savings, a specific dollar amount into a specific account. Roth IRA if you're eligible. 401k up to your employer match at minimum. A taxable brokerage account if you've already maxed the tax-advantaged options. Automate the transfer for the morning your paycheck clears, so the money never sits in your checking account long enough to become a decision. The amount matters less than you think in the beginning. $200 a month is not $1,000 a month, but it builds the habit, and it gets you on the right side of time. $200 a month at 10% annual returns starting at age 25, just over $1 million by 65. That same $200 a month starting at 35, around $452,000 by 65. Same contributions for the same number of years, just a decade later. The difference is more than $600,000 from waiting 10 years. That's what Step 1 is protecting. Step 2, build a real emergency buffer. 3 to 6 months of actual expenses in a high-yield savings account. This is separate from your investments and separate from your regular cash. It is a firewall. Without it, the first time something goes wrong, a job loss, a medical bill, a car repair, you liquidate investments at whatever price the market happens to be that week. Get this built before you do much else. Step 3, cover your real fixed costs. Rent, utilities, insurance, debt minimums, subscriptions you actually use. Don't try to squeeze this into 50% if it doesn't fit there. Know what it actually costs. If it's 65% of your take-home, that's your floor. Work with the real number, not the number the rule thinks you should have. Step 4, spend what's genuinely left. Not 50%. Whatever is actually left after steps 1 through 3 is your discretionary number. Some months that feels comfortable. Some months you realize you're spending more on fixed costs than you'd like, and that's actually useful information. It might mean it's time to renegotiate something, downsize something, or increase your income. The rule can't tell you that. Real numbers can. That's 4 steps. No rigid percentages that only work for certain incomes in certain cities. No pretending that 50% covers needs when it doesn't. No saving last and hoping something survives. Here's what I want you to take from this. The 50-30-20 rule isn't worthless. For someone who has never had any framework at all, it's a useful starting point. It introduces the idea of intentional allocation, and that matters. But most people watching this are past, I need a starting point. You're here because you want to actually build something. And for that, this rule has 3 real problems. It doesn't fit what things actually cost in 2026, it allocates more to spending than to wealth building, and it treats investing and saving like the same thing. The fix isn't complicated. Invest first, automatically. Build your emergency buffer, then figure out what your actual fixed costs are, not what a 20-year-old framework says they should be, and spend whatever's genuinely left. That's not a prettier version of 50-30-20. It's a different approach to what the money is for. If you want to know where to actually put that investment money, which accounts, which funds, in what order, I've got a video breaking that down step by step. I'll link it at the end of this one. And if this was useful, subscribe. New video every week on real personal finance, built around numbers, not generic advice. I'll see you in the next one.